Hello and good evening to everyone. Today's session is day 11. Yesterday we completed 4.1, which is about investigating and reporting incidents. So now we will continue with active and reactive monitoring. Okay. So with monitoring, there are two types. One is active monitoring and reactive monitoring. So what we discussed yesterday, investigation, is an example of a reactive monitoring. Okay. So reactive means we are reacting after an incident has happened. Okay. So after a report of an incident, we carry out an investigation to identify the cause and actions to prevent recurrence. So it is an example of a reactive monitoring, whereas active is being proactive. Okay, so examples like inspection. Okay, so the purpose of inspection is to identify any potential hazards, identify unsafe act or unsafe conditions before it could cause or lead to an incident. So being proactive, checking the existing control measures whether they are adequate. So it is an example of an active monitoring. So inspection, example of active, and investigation, example of reactive monitoring. The difference between active and reactive: active, it takes place before a loss making event or an incident, whereas reactive, it takes place after an event or an undesired event or a loss making event. Okay. A type of inspection of workers, actions, plant, and premises is an example of active monitoring. It observes whether standards are being maintained and controls are working effectively. For instance, we may carry out inspection for the warehouse. Okay? So as part of the inspection, we would be inspecting the warehouse environment. Okay, like the any slip and trip hazards, any storage of materials on the pedestrian walkway, and then the lighting is adequate. And then we also inspect the behavior of the people, like the forklift truck operator, whether they are driving as per the site rules. So inspection is where we observe, okay, whether the standards are being maintained and the controls are working effectively. So during inspection, if you find any the standards are not working or any controls are ineffective, we then take immediate action, or we take corrective actions, so that those ineffective control measures are prevented from leading to a loss making event. So it is a useful technique to help prevent loss. Whereas reactive monitoring is to learn lessons from such an event. Okay. Now, for instance, here, this store, they own 100 stores and 10 in their area. Okay. So assuming all other 10 stores, they have a very similar setup and similar work activities. So the accident that happened here can also be used as a lesson learned for other 9 stores in that area, because the activities are same. So there is a high chance the similar incident could occur in other stores. So they could be used as lessons learned, and then to recommend actions to prevent recurrence of the loss making event. So they are reacting after an loss making event, hence it is called as reactive monitoring. Example of active monitoring is a health and safety inspection. It is a formal examination of a workplace to identify hazards, unsafe work practices, and conditions. Okay. It is conducted by competent person. So who carry out inspection? An inspector, okay, or someone who is competent. For example, if I'm doing inspection for the warehouse, I should be familiar with the warehouse activities. I should able to identify what are the unsafe act or unsafe conditions, or what are the control measures that makes it effective. So as an inspector, they must be competent to identify the hazards and to identify the effectiveness of the control measures. So either internally, here the store manager, they can carry out the warehouse inspection, or externally, example like an enforcement officer. It involves observation of workplace with some questions asked, documents inspected. So it is very general that any inspection is followed by used by a checklist. Okay, so it is a good practice that the inspectors would use a checklist during their inspections. So it involves observation of the workplace and with some questions asked and documents inspected. It can be announced. So inspection can be a formal announced inspection, like for example, weekly inspection. So every week, for instance, on every Monday, there will be an inspection of the warehouse environment, or every quarterly, every 3 months, there would be an inspection of the storage area. Okay, or it could be unannounced to workforce. Okay, because if it is an announced inspection, then the likelihood of unsafe act or unsafe behavior would be very low, because people are aware that an inspection is happening. Hence you may not able to uh, see the real picture of what is happening in the workplace. So unannounced inspections will tell you what is the real conditions or real standards that are being followed. An unannounced inspection, it provides more realistic conditions. Okay, it gives you an actual representation of how health and safety is managed in the workplace. So like I said, inspection, it is a usual practice to use a checklist. Okay. Now this checklist will consist of topics. For example, for the warehouse, the checklist may consist of, okay, I said I would be discussing question 9. Okay. Okay, I'll just park this here for now. Okay. A warehouse inspection checklist. So a checklist consists of many topics. For example, a fire, okay, fire safety. So under fire safety, what are the points that you would check? Okay, so you would check the fire door, obstructed, or you would check the location of the fire extinguisher. So like this, you would be checking a series of pointers under fire safety. So likewise, electrical safety, okay, and then housekeeping, okay, and then slips and trips, okay, or forklift operations. So it gives you an opportunity to check. Okay. Now these checklists, they should be tailored to the workplace for which you are carrying out an inspection. So if I'm doing an inspection for a warehouse, it should be tailored to you know to include all the warehouse activities. Otherwise, the purpose of inspection will fail. Okay, and it also gives you a formal record. It is a documented evidence that a workplace inspection has been done. So some of the strengths of a checklist is, it is more structured, helps with the planning stage. So as an inspector, I know what are the areas that I would be checking. Okay, so it gives you a more structured and helps with the planning stage. Immediate record of inspection findings. Okay, so during inspection, if I find any unsafe condition, immediately I would be recording with a remark or a comment. Okay, important issues will not be overlooked, so you would be going through by the checklist. So if the checklist is tailored, then you will not miss any areas or any potential hazard areas. Consistent inspections. Okay, if different person is using the same checklist and carrying out the inspection, there will be a consistency in the approach. So any person who's doing the inspection will use this checklist, so consistency and useful for analyzing the trends. Okay, so it helps you to highlight what are the problem areas or problem concern. So for example, if you look into last 3 month checklist report, and you may identify there is a trend, like every checklist report, the highest findings that you have observed is related to poor housekeeping. So it helps you to analyze the trends and the problem areas. Now, weakness may be too restrictive, as important issues not on the checklist may be missed. So, as an inspector, I will not be looking into any topic or any area which are not included in the checklist. Okay. So, if your checklist is not up to date or if it is not tailored, then it could be a weakness. Assumption that untrained person can carry out inspection, because people think that anybody can do an inspection with the help of a checklist, but that is not the case. Okay, even to observe something, you need to know what are the right behavior or the unsafe behavior, or what are the hazards, or what are the the controls that are existing. So people, they assume that, so in that instance, people may not give weightage for the inspection checklist. Maybe a lowered perception of risk. Now, if I do a daily inspection of the housekeeping of the warehouse, okay, so my perception of risk would be very low, because I may not pay attention to the details, because it is something that I do every day. So it becomes like an activity where I may not pay attention to the details. And checklist may not be regularly reviewed, so has its risk or miss. If any new activities are carried out, or if there is any changes in the layout of the warehouse, any changes in the use of substance, accordingly the checklist must be updated. If they are not updated, then it could lead to another weakness of the checklist. So checklist is very important as part of inspection. And then who would be carrying out the inspection? A competent person. Okay. And then as a competent person, they also need to ensure how frequent the inspection would be happening, whether it is a daily inspection or a weekly or a monthly or a quarterly inspection. And then during inspection, how you're going to record the findings and the comments or the remarks. And after the inspection, the follow-up, what actions would be taken and who will be responsible for ensuring those actions are implemented. So all this information will have to be planned before inspection. So the inspection would be an active monitoring control. So other active monitoring method. So inspection is one example of active monitoring. Active monitoring means we are being proactive. So taking, uh, you know, checking the adequacy of the standards and existing controls before a loss-making event could occur. So other types of active monitoring are safety sampling, safety tour. Okay, safety sampling, it is similar to safety inspections. Sorry, but involves making observations in a small specific area, okay, carried out on a pre-arranged regular basis, and same work equipment, environment and procedures each time. Now, when we look at the word sampling, okay, for instance, if I have to do the inspection of all the fire extinguishers in this building, okay, now the purpose of the inspection is to go and check the fire extinguishers are in the correct location and they are in good condition. Okay. Now, so one way to check is to walk through the entire building, all the story of the building, and then go and physically check every extinguisher on its correct location and good condition. Okay. Second is safety sampling. Now, as part of sampling, I take a reasonable sample. If, let's say, there are 200 extinguishers in this building, now I take a sample of, let's say, a 10% or 20%. So out of these 200, randomly I go and inspect any 30 fire extinguishers. Okay. If those 30 fire extinguishers are in correct location and in good condition, then it gives a strong assumption that the remaining 170 extinguishers are also in good conditions and in correct location. So by doing a safety sampling, we are still doing a physical check, but we do a random check, okay, by taking a reasonable sample and checking the doing a physical check. So it is a less time consuming when compared to a full comprehensive inspection. But you cannot do only safety sampling. Safety sampling can be used as a supplement to a safety inspection. Okay. Now, for instance, if you're doing if there is an inspection scheduled, okay, uh, day one of, okay, every month, okay. So in between two inspection, you can schedule a safety sampling. Okay. So this safety sampling can be done on day 15 of every month. Okay. So it acts as a secondary or a supplement to the main active monitoring, which is an inspection. So through safety sampling, you're still doing a physical check, but only randomly. So if during that 30 fire extinguishers, if 10 of the fire extinguishers are in critical condition, then again it gives you a clear assumption that most of the other extinguishers also need replacement. So it is carried out on a pre-arranged regular basis and normally carried out by workers who are familiar with the area using yes/no checklist. Okay. So for instance here the forklift truck operators, they can do a safety sampling which can be verified by the supervisor. Okay. Whereas the warehouse inspection will be done by the store manager. Workers give completed checklist to supervisor who will complete follow-up actions. Okay. So again, useful for studying trends, very similar to the inspection report. And then safety tour used to demonstrate management commitment to health and safety. Now, tour generally refers to a group of people. Okay, so group of people here, the managers of the area or the person responsible for health and safety or a worker representative and also a senior management. So they go on a safety tour. So during a safety tour, one advantage is they are able to show visible leadership, a visible presence to the workers, which is not the case in this scenario. As you could clearly see, they rarely see management in the warehouse. So they don't do any safety tour or any walkthrough inspections of the warehouse. Okay. So manager, they must wear appropriate PP while carrying out the inspection. So if the management is visiting the warehouse, they must follow the warehouse rules. They must wear the required PP. So that is another way of demonstrating commitment to people and health and safety. The manager should have awareness of health and safety and be a competent observer to note down non-compliance. So as part of safety too, they also would be interacting with the workers and operators They would have a two-way communication, and they also note down the areas of non-compliance. So to that extent, they should have awareness to health and safety. The manager should be prepared to briefly discuss health and safety matters. So interacting with the workers, taking their inputs, opinion, and then having a discussions on the good practice, the challenges that the workers they have in health and safety, carried out at irregular intervals and should be unannounced. Again, like an inspection, it cannot be a formal. It can be formal, but it should also be an unannounced inspection from the managers to the warehouse. Next is reactive monitoring measures. Okay. Now, reactive is more about the data that we have. Okay. So with the data, how are we able to do an analysis of the data and how we are able to identify the problem areas and then make improvements to reduce the risk and to prevent future incidents. Okay. You may have heard about accident frequency rate and accident incidence rate. Okay. Now, accident frequency rate. So by looking at the phrase, we can say it tells you what is the frequency of accident occurring in the organization. Okay. I can go and check. So you could see accident frequency rate, number of lost time injury into a multiplier and divided by man hours worked. Okay. Total. So for this, we need two data. One is the number of accidents recorded, okay, and second, total man hours worked, okay. And for this, you need to know the number of staff employed, okay. Now consider there are 20 staff, employed, and we have to calculate what is the total man hours worked. Okay, so usually it you know they every organization based on their working hours per day they calculate. Okay, so for example, it is if it is 40 hours, per week. Okay, or sometimes they translate it to 200 hours per month. Okay, so assuming 200 hours per month. Okay, so this is the working hours for one worker. Okay, so for 20 workers, it would be 200 into 20. Okay, so total man hours worked is 4,000 man hours worked for that month. So this is the man hours. And likewise, you're going to record what the number of accidents recorded. So let's say from the number of incidents that are reported and recorded, it is 10. Okay. And then you will be using a multiplier. Okay. Now, in general, if you are comparing, if you are making a comparison between let's say two organization, but the size of the organization is different, we cannot do a direct comparison with the number of accidents recorded. Okay. So for that, we use something called a multiplier. So here you see 200,000, is called, it is the multiplier. Okay. This is for on shows. This is from OSHA, 200,000. Now let's assume there is an organization A, okay, and the number of incidents recorded is 20 incidents, okay. And then we have organization B. The number of incident recorded is 30 incidents. Okay. So here we cannot make a direct comparison with the number of incident. So if we make a direct comparison, if anybody would say organization B has a poor health and safety performance because of a high number of incidents recorded when compared to organization A. But we should also consider the number of staff employed. Okay, so here 500 staff employed when compared to here 600 staff employed. So the number of staff employed is more. Okay. The number of staff employed is more when compared to the number of staff employed for organization A. Okay. So for 500 staff, 20 incidents recorded compared to organization B, 900 staff, 30 incidents recorded. So what we have is raw data. Okay. So with raw data, we cannot make a direct comparison. So we need to convert it to an rate, and then we can directly compare using the rate. So another example is the accident incidence rate. Okay. So accident incidence rate equal to the number of accidents and divided by number of employed persons into a multiplier. Okay. So let's assume we are going to calculate AIR, which is accident incidence rate. So at what rate accidents are occurring in an organization? Okay. So at that, for if you are calculating the AIR, okay, for organization A, okay, so number of accident is 20, okay, and then you divide by the number of staff employed, which is 500, okay, and then you multiply using a multiplier. For example, here 10,000 or 1,000. Okay, you find a value. Similarly, AIR for organization B equal to number of incidents is 30, divide by staff employed is 900, and then we multiply using a multiplier called 1000. So now we need to find what is the AIR for both the organization. So 20, so if I do 20,000 divided by 500, 40. So here it is 40, and then here 30,000 divided by 900, which is 33.3. Okay. So when we just look at the number of incidents, 20 and 30, we may think that organization A has a better safety performance, but in reality, organization B has a better safety performance because their AIR, accident incidence rate, is 33 compared to organization A, which is 40. So what this 40 means, 40 incident recorded for every 1000 staff employed, because we are using the multiplier 1000. Now, similarly here, 33 incidents recorded for every 1000 staff employed. So as the number of staff increases, the number of incident rate also increase. So now we could say from this number, a organization B has a better safety performance because 33 incidents recorded for every 1000 staff employed, compared to organization A, where 40 incident recorded for every 1000 staff employed. So this multiplier is used. Now we can make a direct comparison. 33 less than 40, hence organization B. Now, let's consider here the number of staff. Instead of three-digit number 500, let's say they have four-digit number like 1520 staff. Okay, and here they have 2300 staff. Okay, now this multiplier, instead of 1000, because if you use 1000, now still you would get a meaningful number. So instead of 40, you will get a single digit number. So we will increase this multiplier from 1000 to 10,000. Okay. Now we will calculate for every 10,000 workers employed, what is the rate of which accidents are recording. So it is just a multiplier that can be changed according to the size of the workforce. Do you understand this part? So, okay. So for your examination purpose, they will not be asking you to calculate the accident incident rate or accident frequency rate. But for the understanding, the numbers that we have, these are raw data. So with the raw data, we cannot do a direct comparison of the performance. Hence, we use different kind of rate like incidence rate, accident frequency rate, accident, ill health rate. So those are used to find at what rate something is happening, and with that we can compare the health and safety performance of the organization. Okay. So with the reactive monitoring, we have data in hand. Okay. So what data we have? We have data on the number of incidents reported and recorded, the number of injury accident recorded, the number of near misses recorded, okay, the number of damage only accident recorded. So with these data and with the analysis of the data, it helps us to highlight the problem areas. Okay. Now, for example, if I am doing something similar, like for the ill health data, okay. So we collect all the data of ill health, okay. For example, back pain, how many injuries of back pain recorded, and then finger injuries, okay, or burn injury, okay, and then we would say in general muscle injuries or spasm. So we will collect all this data and then we do an analysis which has the highest number of ill health occurrence. So if you see that back pain contributes to 60% of the ill health data, then this is the area something that needs immediate attention. So we go and see how the risk assessments are developed for the manual handling activity. Okay, and then we see what are the contributing factors for back pain. So that will help us to assess what are the effectiveness of the controls, whether we can improve, reduce the injury rate through training or by modifying the workplace or by providing an mechanical equipment and so on. So data collected, and then we have to analyze the data. Now, to analyze the data, you need to have a good quality data. Okay. So if there are 50 incidents, occurred, but only 20 incidents are recorded, then your analysis will not give you an actual representation of workplace. So first, the quality of the data is very important. Okay, you need to encourage people from reporting and recording with that data. Then if you do an analysis, it will help to improve the overall effectiveness of the control. So I can answer many questions from analysis. I can ask in this warehouse, okay, which at what time most incidents are occurring in the warehouse. So from the analysis, they may say morning 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. is when more number of incidents are recorded. Okay. And then I can answer, like ask which particular location the highest number of incident recorded. Then I may see that in the loading area, highest number of incidents recorded. Okay. Or we may ask what type of injury incident recorded the highest. Then we may see that slip trip has been the highest number of injury incident recorded. So any questions you ask, you will get answers from the good data collected and analysis. Okay. So to that extent, reactive monitorings are very useful. Okay. So we may think that an incident has happened, but the data that we collect from those incidents and how we use it for predicting the future incidents and how we can prevent future incidents. So precautions of using AFR and AIR, there may be different definitions of an accident in different organization. Okay. Now, if you see here, in general, I've mentioned as incidents. Okay. So some organization, they may say incident is any incident. For example, even if it is a damage only, they will record under incident. Or if it is an injury accident, they will record under incident. Some organization, they will record only near miss under incident. So when you are making a comparison, it is also important to understand that both the organization or both the department, they follow the same definition or terminology. Okay. So one organization might include contractors working on the site, whereas another might not. So here, when you are calculating the man hours, okay, so some organization, they may only include the man hours of their own staff. Another organization, they may include the contractor man hours also in that analysis. So that could be another things that we need to check. And then different organizations may arrive at their figures in a different way. So like for like comparison may not always be advisable. So this comparison would be very much helpful when you're comparing within the organization. Okay. So within the organization, like you can do a comparison for all the 10 stores in your area, or you can do the comparison of all the 100 stores of that same organization, or you can compare department to department within the organization, because throughout the organization the definitions, everything would be same. But when you're comparing with another organization, there could be changes in the way how they are recording the information or how they are defining an incident. Okay. So different organizations may arrive at their figures. So making a like for like comparison may not always be advisable. Okay. So why lessons need to be learned from beneficial and adverse events. Okay. So to build on knowledge from beneficial events and prevent recurrences of adverse event. So we are building knowledge from those events. Okay. So with those numbers and data, we are building knowledge. Like I said, I want to know at what time of the day more incidents are recorded. So now you go and do a thorough investigation. What activities are happening during that time of the day, and why morning 8 to 10 more incidents are occurring. So it helps you to do a comprehensive, thorough investigation of that particular time activities, and then you can arrive at the results and then prevent recurrences of adverse event. To reduce the risk of prosecution due to criminal offense and the risk of civil actions brought by injured workers. So overall, by preventing the recurrence of an incident, you're avoiding the financial losses, you're avoiding the legal consequences, and you're also avoiding the moral of the workers. So for an organization, how they would benefit is fewer increase in the insurance cost, improved image, higher morale. So very similar to what we discussed in learning outcome 1.1, the direct cost and the indirect cost, these are the benefit. Now for worker, they will not undergo any incident or any pain or suffering. It will increase the morale of the worker. Okay, they would always feel that they are working in a safe place, in an organization where there is a stronger commitment from the management. Okay, and then where any incident, management they takes them very seriously and do a thorough investigation to learn lessons to prevent future incidents. So it increases the morale as workers perceive that management have learned lessons from previous incidents. Okay. So the difference between lagging and leading indicators. So sometimes you may see instead of the using the word active monitoring, they use the word leading indicators, and reactive is used as called as a lagging indicators. So what are leading and lagging indicators? Leading indicators, they provide current information about the effectiveness of the health and safety management performance of an organization prior to any incidents occur causing loss. So examples like safety inspections and safety audits. Okay. So why it is called leading indicator is these safety inspection, it gives you the findings before an adverse event has happened. Okay. So for example, if you see that for the last 3 months, okay, and as part of your safety inspection, you observe that the number of findings that you recorded has reduced, every month. Okay, so this gives you an indication that the chance of a future incident has reduced. Okay, so I repeat, from your inspection findings, you do an analysis and find for the last 3 months or last 6 months, the number of findings that you recorded, non-complaints that you record as part of your inspection has gradually reduced. Let's say you recorded 20 findings 3 months back, and then in the last month only 10 findings, and this month only 5 findings. So this clearly indicates the chance of an accident occurring in future is less. Okay. But if your inspection finding has increased for the last 3 months, what it indicates is the chance of an accident occurring in future is high because your inspection finding is showing a trend of increase. Okay. Now lagging indicator, these are the data from the data from the incident that has already occurred. Okay, it can only track negative outcomes after they have occurred. So general examples, incident statistics and ill health reports. So incident statistics, it tells you how the incidents have occurred. So for the last 6 months, it may indicate that the number of incidents recorded has increased, or the number of incidents recorded has decreased. So it gives you an indication that the chance of future incidents is high or less. So they are all used as an indicator. So it tells you how your performance is going to be in the future. What is the probability of an adverse event occurring in the future? Will it increase or will it decrease? Okay. So next part is health and safety auditing. Okay. Whenever we hear this term audit, we always think about the health and the management system. Okay, whether it is a health and safety audit or environmental audit or a quality audit or a food safety audit. Audit means evaluation of the management system. So health and safety auditing. Audit is a systematic, independent, and documented process. When we say a systematic, it follows an audit plan. Okay, like a PDCA management cycle, it follows an audit plan and it is independent. Okay, for an audit to be effective, it must be independent. Okay, for example, if an external person is doing an audit for your organization, the audit will have more weightage compared to the audit done by your internal person. Okay, so if an internal person is doing an audit, they uh, they may be influenced by the management. Okay, let's say if there are two major findings, the management will influence to remove those or to change those major findings into minor findings, but that will not happen when an external person is auditing. So it, if it is independent, someone who is not, you know, who is totally an outsider, who is totally independent of the organization, then the audit would be effective. And then a documented process for obtaining audit evidence and evaluating it subjectively to determine the extent to which the audit criteria are fulfilled. Okay, so now you have something called an audit criteria, the standard used or against to which to judge the evidence. Okay, now, for example, the audit criteria, let's say it is ISO 45001. So the audit will use ISO 45001 as a standard, and then as part of an audit, you will make a comparison to the standard and see what are the requirements are met from the standard. So audit criteria is the standard used against which you judge the evidence. Okay, audit evidence is what is looked at and gathered during the audit. Okay. So during the audit, you may interview the workers, you may do a direct physical observation of the workplace, you may collect the documents, to seek any evidences. Okay, like the training records, maintenance records, the risk assessment. So audit is all about to identify the weakness in your management system. So that is the whole purpose of the audit, to identify where are the gaps in your system, and then taking a corrective action to remove the gap and to overall improve the effectiveness of your system. So internal audits are used for internal purpose and done by the organization itself. So for example, the health and safety person in charge, they may carry out an internal audit so that it ensures that the system is ready for an external audit. Okay. So for example, next in a month of August, an ISO audit is going to happen. So before that August, like 2 months before that, you do an internal audit to check whether your system is ready for an ISO, audit. So that could also be one of the reason for an internal audit. Or in general, overall, you want to ensure your systems are effective or not. For that, you carry out an internal audit. External audits used to give assurance to external parties. So it can be done by the ISO certification bodies or it can be done by a regulatory body. For example, the civil defense will carry out a fire safety audit. Okay, or even your insurers, they will do a health and safety audit because they pay the compensation for any accidents occurring in your workplace. So they also can do an audit. Or as a customer, on behalf of the customer, the second party audit will happen. So these are all examples of external audit. So external audits can happen as part of fulfilling the regulatory compliance, as part of fulfilling the accreditation bodies, or to meet the requirements of the customer where there is a contractual agreement. Okay. Now, in general, they say audit they happen in two stages. Okay. Stage one audit is where you collect all the documents. It's very much about document review. Okay. So colloquially, they say what you do. Okay. And then stage two audit is direct observation. Okay. So are you doing what you say? Do what you say. Okay. So say what you do is you may, for example, a risk assessment procedure. You may have a risk assessment procedure. The procedure will tell how risk assessments are carried out in this organization. And then stage two audit, for example, in your risk assessment, you say that, what are the hazards, or one of the control is, segregation of forklift truck. Now, as part of stage two audit, they'll go and verify, are you doing what you are saying? That means whatever you're saying in the procedure, are you implementing or not? That would be a stage two audit. Okay. So this audit, they will define the number of days required for the audit to be completed. So for that, you need to know what is the scope of audit. Okay? So whether the audit is a full comprehensive audit for the entire site, or is it an audit for a particular process or a department. Okay. And then what is the size of the workforce. Okay. So if I'm going to do an audit for a company where they employ 500 staff, and there are many different departments and many different process, uh, approximately, let's say, it would take let's say 4 audit days. Okay. So it would require 4 audit days to complete a full audit for a company where there are 500 staff. Okay, the scope of the audit could be like it's a full comprehensive audit which about health and safety. So now you have 4 audit days. For that 4 audit days, maybe one day they will allocate for stage one like document review, and 3 days they may use it for implementation audit. Okay, so audit days will be plan. So as an auditor, they will have to notify the client or the auditee that they have to give an audit plan and schedule. So 4 days, for each 4 days, what process or what ISO clause they would be auditing on which day. And they would also need to have access to the people so they can verify, interview them, ask them questions, and seek them as an evidence. So, as on a whole, it is important that I will come to this part. See, so first is notification of the audit and timetable for auditing. Okay, so you will have to notify your client what are your audit days, and then you have to give a plan. If you're going to do an audit for 4 days, so day one, what you will audit. Day two, which clause you will audit. Day three, which clause. So you have to give a proper audit plan or a timetable for auditing. And then pre-audit preparation, some auditors, they would request for the documents to check before they start the audit. Okay, sometimes for a document heavy audit, they would request for the documents. And pre-audit preparations, again, from the client, there should be a guide or someone who would be assisting the auditor, because auditor is someone who's new to your workplace, so you need to make arrangement or facilities for the auditors. Okay. And for example, if I'm going to do a day one audit on the workshop, so I need to ensure the person in charge of the workshop, the health and safety person in charge of the workshop, or the workshop manager, they should be available for day one of the audit, because the auditor may directly seek questions from the workshop manager or other technicians. So likewise, day two, if I'm going to do an site audit of the office, then for the office, they should, the people who are in charge, they should be made available for day two audit. So these are all part of the pre-audit preparations. And then information gathering. So during audit, the auditor will gather information three ways. One, from the documents they gather information. From the interviews with from the staff, they will gather information. And third one is physical check, direct observation of the workplace. And then they would do an analysis from the informations gathered. These are the evidences that they collect, and then they would check whether they are meeting the requirements of the ISO standard, or they are meeting the requirements of the procedures. So if your procedure says that we will review the risk assessment every 6 months, and then you're looking at the risk assessment document and you notice that for the last 12 months the risk assessment is not reviewed. So that is a finding, because you are not doing what you are saying. Okay. And then the contents of the audit report. So now the auditor will prepare a detailed report of the findings that they have identified. Okay. So findings related to the policy clause, findings related to the implementation clause, or findings related to the uh, uh, check clause. So they will give a full audit report. What are the findings? And then they will be communicating the findings to the client or to the audit team. Okay, so they will communicate. So there will be a closing meeting where both the party will sit and discuss on the findings, and they will make agree upon the findings. Okay, so client, they also have the right to to seek for further evidence of the findings that are being recorded, because as an auditor I cannot just record a findings without a proper evidence. So all this will happen during a closing meeting, and it is the responsibility of the auditor to explain what the findings, or why it is a finding, or what is the breach of the standard or the requirement. And then overall review of the audit system. So now they would give you the outcome of the audit. For example, if the audit is done for the certification purpose, they may say that you have successfully granted for certification. Or if there are major findings, they would say the certification, the system needs more improvement. So there will be another a follow-up audit that will happen before the certification is approved. So in general, these are the stages of the audit. Okay. So we'll go back. Okay. All right. So now we will take a break, and then we would continue with the audit element. Okay. So we would take the 15-minute break, and then we shall continue. Welcome back after the break. So we were discussing about health and safety auditing, and with that, the definitions and the audit stages. So why health and safety management systems should be audited? Okay. So it verifies the effectiveness of the management system. So that is the whole objective of an audit, to verify your management system, its effectiveness, identify the gaps, the weakness in your system, and then take actions for continual improvement. So it continually improves the management system. Okay, identifies weakness and failings in the system. For example, you may find a gap in the training requirements of your organization. Okay, like the trainings or the trainings are not conducted at regular intervals. For example, the annual refresher training for the forklift operator is not happening, or you may identify that the maintenance of the forklift truck is not happening at regular intervals, or the policies are not reviewed at the regular intervals, or you may see that the uh, the risk assessments are not reviewed. So it identifies the weakness and extent to which elements are not meeting the required standard. So if it is not meeting the required standard, it tells you to what extent it is not meeting the required standard. So is it just the policies are not reviewed, or is it just the policies are not effectively implemented? Okay. So if the policies are not reviewed, then it could just see as a minor findings. But if the policies are not implemented, then it highlights a major findings in your system. Okay. For instance, you may find that some of the extinguishers are not found on the correct extinguisher bracket. It was placed on the floor. Whereas if some of the extinguishers, you see that pressure gauge is on the red zone, that means the extinguishing media is not you know uh, inside the fire extinguisher. So when you're using the fire extinguisher, it may not suppress the fire. Or you may find that everything is happening, but you are not maintaining a record of inspection of the fire extinguisher. So it tells you to what extent your elements are not meeting the required standard, and enables organization to take action to address the failings in the system. Okay, so for any weakness or any gaps you identify, you take actions. Identifies the strength of the management system and where the organization has performed well. So many people think audit is only to criticize the management system weakness. No, audit also highlights the strengths of your management system. Okay, it assists management in directing resources to areas where improvement is advised, and identifies opportunities for improving how health and safety is managed. So they also not just about the continual improvement, it also tells you where the opportunities are there for your system, to improve on, and how it can be seen as an advantage for your business requirements. So difference between audit and inspection. Okay, again, there is people, they get confused with audit and inspection, but we need to understand inspection is one part of the audit. Okay. Inspections, straightforward visual observation of the workplace and activities at a particular time. Okay. So if I'm doing an inspection today morning 10, so at that particular time, what are the representation of safety in the workplace? Whereas audit is a thorough examination of the documented health and safety management system and process. Okay, so from policies to documents to procedures to record, so a thorough examination of the documented health and safety. management system. For example, during inspection, you know, I may inspect the fire extinguisher. Okay. So I do a physical inspection. I check the fire extinguishers are in the correct location, and I check the overall condition of the extinguisher, any external damages to the extinguisher. I will check the pressure gauge. Okay. So those are the things I do on during inspection. But if I'm doing an audit, okay, I will do a physical inspection, okay, of the fire extinguisher, and I would also check the extinguisher inspection record, okay, and also any procedures, let's say for the extinguisher installation, or the contractor who would be, doing the maintenance or inspections of the extinguisher. I'll also check the contractual agreement. Okay. So you could see, as part of an audit, from A to Z around the extinguisher, I would be checking. Okay. I would check the daily inspection record of the fire extinguisher. I would check the quarterly or the 6 monthly inspection maintenance record of the extinguisher. And then I'll check who is the supplier of the extinguisher. I'll check your contractual agreement with that supplier. Okay. So all this would be, and then what is the procedure that you have for the inspections or for the fire extinguisher installation? Or if there is any defect, you identify how the defect is reported and how it is recorded. So what are your fire extinguisher defect reports? So everything from the procedures to document the policies that you have for the extinguisher would be thoroughly examined. Okay. And the inspection takes a short time to complete. So inspection is very quick. You within like a few minutes to few hours you can complete the inspection. But audit takes longer. Like I said, it depends on the scope of your audit, the size of your organization, the scope of your audit. The audit can take from 1 days to even 10 days or 15 days. Okay, so it takes longer time. And then inspections takes place more frequently, every month, every quarter or so. But an audit, the frequency is less. Okay, every 6 months or once every 12 month. Okay. So because it's a longer process, the frequency of audit is less. And then inspection, sorry, carried out by an internal worker. Okay, whereas audits carried out by an external person. So because of that, audits, they would have a highly skilled or a high degree person required to complete audit, because they need to be a certified auditor, and they should have the audit skills, and also good knowledge or up to date about the regulatory requirements. But for an inspector, someone who is able to identify the hazards, the behaviors, or who can evaluate the existency of the control measures, to that extent they would be competent. So less technical skill compared to an audit, and then result in a short report completed checklist. So mostly they would use a checklist, and the checklist would seek as an evidence. Okay. But for an audit, they would prepare a very comprehensive report of the findings, of the strength and weakness of your management system. Inspection requires fairly limited resources and could be carried out by one person. Okay, so one person can do the inspection with just the help of a checklist. Okay, but for an audit, it requires significant resources. So if an audit is going to happen for 5 days, okay, so for 5 full days, you would be engaging the auditor from the client side. Okay, so more than an inspection, it may require more input from multiple people. So you have to make people from the workshop available on day one, from the office day two, from the from the storage facility day three. So many people input would be required, and the time and resources would also be required. So it is a very long process and significant resources would be needed. But for inspection, very limited time. One person, maybe a 2 man hours of one person is all is needed for the inspection and assisted by a checklist. Okay. So different types of audit, a product or a service audit. So looks at a specific product and or service to establish whether they are conforming to relevant requirements. Okay. For example, if the scope of the audit is to determine how trainings are, planned, analyzed, and delivered, okay, in your organization. Okay. Or maybe another scope I would say um, to determine the transportation service of your staff. Okay. So the scope could vary, and it is important what is the okay, you're doing an audit for one particular service that the company provides, okay, or a process audit. Okay, so process again from for example, for the warehouse activities, there are many different process from see for example, if you see here, this is an example of a process. You read this paragraph. Okay. So warehouse workers use forklift trucks. So first is the delivery trucks, they arrive to the warehouse. Okay, from the delivery truck arriving to the warehouse, and then from there the warehouse workers they use the forklift truck to move the goods from the delivery truck into the warehouse, and then when the store is closed, the goods are moved into the main part of the store to restock the shelves. And then at the back of the store, through an automatic opening door, is a large warehouse. Hmm. So from the delivery truck to the warehouse to the loading area, from the loading area to the warehouse shelf, and then from the warehouse shelf to the store area to restock the shelves. Okay, so this is one process that is happening in this warehouse. So likewise for this organization, they have other departments. Let's say for the office administration department. Okay, or for the office cleaning or housekeeping department. So every department will have a process. The process will tell what they do. Okay. So as part of the process audit, you're defining or process working within expected limits. Is the process being done with a set time, level of accuracy, component mixture? Or does the process work as expected using the required available resources? Or the process controls effective and adequate? So you're only auditing one particular process from A to Z. And then system audit, the management systems. So you're looking at the performance of the management systems from policy to leadership commitment, consultation, training, support, okay, monitoring, incident investigation. So this is the system audit. So what is an internal audit and external audit? Internal audit is done by person within the organization. For example, here the store manager can do an internal audit, or the health and safety responsible person can do an internal audit. External audit is done by a person who is independent of the organization. Okay, like the inspector may do an external audit. So internal audit is also called as first party audit, whereas external audit is called as a third party audit. So sometimes they use a first party audit instead of the term internal audit. Okay. Now, what are the advantages and limitations of both internal and external audit? Okay. Now, here we are only looking at the advantages. So, internal auditor advantages: familiar with the organization's workplace and process, because the audit is done by the store manager. Okay. So here they are already familiar with the warehouse activities, with the systems that are in place in the warehouse. So the audit, that is an advantage. But for an external, sorry, the other advantage is aware of what is practicable for this type of organization. So if I'm making a recommendation, I will only recommend which are practicable for this type of organization. Okay, because I am working for this organization, I know about the management, whether they will approve this or not. So I will only make practicable recommendation. And then familiar with the worker qualities, competencies, and attitude. So I'm already familiar with the workforce, their competencies and skills. The workforce may be more cooperative with the internal auditor, because people know me, so they will cooperate. That means they provide me the required information during the audit. Okay, less expensive than an external auditor. Okay, sometimes you don't even pay for an internal audit, because it could be an additional responsibility of the store manager or the health and safety officer of the warehouse to do this internal audit. Okay, and then can see improvements from previous audits more than the external auditor. So you are an internal person, you could easily see any improvements that are happening within the organization. External auditor advantage: likely to have more audit skills and expertise. So they go through an audit, they will define an audit criteria, they will define an audit plan, and then they go by the clauses of the ISO requirements. So they have the audit skills and the expertise. Another advantage: not biased or concerned about criticizing management or other workers. They are external people. So they go by the audit standard and the requirement. So their findings will be evidence based. Okay. So when they're giving a recommendation, they don't care about whether the management will criticize. No. Okay, more up to date with the legal requirements. So any changes or amendments happening with the legal standards, they will be up to date. Okay. Outside perspective means auditor may see things missed by the organization's own workers. So you're bringing a fresh pair of eyes. Okay. So any attention to details missed by the internal auditor will be captured by the external auditor. So any findings that are missed will be identified, because they have a fresh pair of eyes. May know of best practice and solutions to problems used in other organizations. So they will try to, yeah, tell the good practice or the practice that have already been successful in another organization here, which can be a solution. Okay, sorry. And then seen to be independent. So they will not be biased, or they cannot be influenced by the internal person. Okay, so that means that is seen as an advantage. Now here there is no slide for limitations. So that means whatever is the advantage of an internal audit can be seen as a disadvantage for an external audit. Okay. For example, internal audit less expensive. So one of the limitation for external audit is they are expensive. Okay. And here, workforce may be more cooperative. So, limitation for external audit is workforce may not be cooperative. So, they may not seek the required information for the audit. So likewise, the advantage of an external could be a limitation for an internal. Okay. For instance, here, external, they have more audit skills and expertise, which could be a limitation for an internal audit where they may not possess audit skills and the expertise. Okay. Here, independent, whereas the limitation for internal audit, they are not independent, they may be influenced by the management decisions. Okay. And then here, they are up to date with the legal requirement. So limitation for an internal audit is they may not be up to date with the current practice and the legal requirements. So the advantage of internal would be a limitation for an external. Likewise, the advantage of an external would be a limitation for an internal. Okay. So moving to the last part, review of health and safety performance. Okay. So why to review health and safety performance and what you would review? The reasons to review a health and safety performance is to ensure compliance with the national legislation. So, as an organization, they would maintain a legal register. So, the register will tell you what are the regulatory, requirements that are applicable to this organization from the business, and it is important that they should comply. So to make a judgment on the adequacy of the health and safety performance. So review will tell you your health and safety performance is improving or reducing. Okay. So if it is improving, then it would be seen as a positive indicator, and then you see as a continual improvement to identify areas where the health and safety performance may be improved. So review also will tell you where are your gaps or weakness in your systems and how it could be improved. For example, it may tell that in the communication part it is the weaker area. Okay, so that particular clause communication, or it may tell you uh, that the reactive monitoring is the weakness area because you are not recording the data or the analysis part is not happening, so it tells you where the weakness and to be able to respond to change. Okay, and to learn lessons from experiences and take action based on lessons learned and to identify trends of incidents. So, at what rate incidents are occurring in your workplace, and then to take account of the human factors that have contributed to the accidents. Okay, and to ensure that it is effective in managing risk and protecting people. So, how these reviews would happen? These reviews again it could occur at different frequencies. Take for the department, they have a departmental review like monthly review, or at the board level, they would do a every 12-month review, or they may also do a process review, which can happen quarterly. So the frequency varies again depending on what is the at what level the reviews are happening and what are the scope of your review. So what you should consider during review. Okay. So during review, I would be reviewing the internal audit report and external audit reports. Okay. So what are the findings from my audit reports? And then I would review the incident data. Okay, the number of incidents recorded for the last 12 months. So what type of incidents like vehicle accidents, slip trip incident, fall at height incident. So the entire incident data I would be reviewing and see what the which incidents is the highest proportion of incidents. So review provides an opportunity for the actions to be taken. and then whether the objectives have been met and reasons why. Okay, at the start of the year, you may have set an objective. For example, reduce accident rate by 10%. Okay, so you would review whether this objective has been met. So if you have met this objective, then for the next year you would set a new objective. Okay, so next year you would may set an objective of 15% because you are able to reduce 10%. So you set an objective which focuses on continual improvement. Okay, if the set objective is not implemented or not achieved, then you would find reasons why. Okay, is it because my health and safety, a person in charge is not competent, or is it because the resources are not adequately allocated? Okay, or is it because the arrangements for implementation have failed? So you will find reasons why the set objective is not achieved. Okay, and then actions from previous management reviews. So that would be the talking point of in your previous management review, you may have set certain actions. So you would check whether those actions have been closed out. Okay, and then assessing opportunities for improvement and the need for change. Okay, so you would assess what changes are likely to happen in the coming year. For example, if there is any change that is happening in the regulations, or any change that is going to happen at the senior management level, or if in 3 months you're going to introduce a new machinery or a new technology. So all this would be reviewed and see whether you have a proper plan in place for this change to happen. Okay, and then benchmarking against others in a similar business sector. So it is also important to compare your accident data, your ill health data, or to compare. It's not like you're comparing the service that you're provided, or comparing the your annual revenues. No, here you're comparing the health and safety performance, and then summarize results of your inspections, tour, and sampling. Okay, so you will review your inspection reports, your safety tour reports, your sampling reports. So where are the non-compliances and how to improve it. And then absence and sickness from incidents and ill health. Okay, your absenteeism record, your sickness record. Okay, your absenteeism record may tell what are the reasons for the highest number of absenteeism reported. Okay, and then your quality assurance reports, the monitoring data records and reports like medical personnel monitoring, noise monitoring reports, uh, and then your risk assessments. So all this would be part of your review reports. So overall, uh, every clauses, supporting documents and procedures and process will be reviewed. So these reviews, they provide you an opportunity to set a new objective for the next year, and where are the weakness, whether in terms of manpower or in terms of budget or technical resources, or is it due to the human factors, like the competency is not achieved, or the trainings are not provided, or is it due to the involvement, more involvement needed from the senior management. So all this would be properly assessed, and the review meeting minutes will be circulated to all people, so that the actions will be planned accordingly. Okay. So reporting on health and safety performance. Okay. Results of the review should be reported to senior people at the board level. So what is the agenda? What is the actions, and how you're going to address those actions. So impact of any changes needs to be reported to the board as soon as practicable, so that the board can allocate sufficient resources. Now, on a very simple note, say every department, they would be having a budget. For example, health and safety department, let's say they have an annual budget of, $100,000. Okay. So within that budget, you're going to, allocate your, your departmental, whether you're purchasing PPEs, or whether you're providing training to your people, or whether you're purchasing an equipment. So all this will be within the budget. So for instance, if no this year you're going to purchase more number of PPs, or you're going to purchase a new equipment, then you should notify the board so they can increase your budget for the next year, so the health and safety requirements are being met. And then results of the health and safety performance review may be discussed in the meetings between management and worker representatives. And in a very small organization, the managing director may call a meeting of all workers and communicate. Okay, because it's a small size company, so they could just set up a meeting, and then they could discuss the outcome of the review. So large organizations will include a section on health and safety performance in the company's annual report. So in the company annual report, there will be one section health and safety. So there they would be, communicating the outcomes of the review. Okay. All right. So now we would go back to the question paper. So question 9, yesterday I asked you to jot down some points. So the investigation into the recent accident is now focusing on management failure. So management failure means you have to identify the root causes. Okay. So based on the scenario only, what management failures could have contributed to this accident? Now, if you have mentioned about, like, goods stacked in aisles and blocking designated walkway, okay, or forklift skidded on oil spillage, okay, or if you say that rule breaking in the warehouse. So these are not the management failures. So management failures, it the shift, the focus shifts towards the policies and procedures and documents. Now, when I say forklift skidded on an oil spillage, so that is your immediate cause. Immediate cause is the oil spill. Okay. Now the underlying cause is why there is an oil spill. Okay. Or what happened is the forklift skidded on an oil spill is the underlying cause of the incident. Root cause is, if there is an oil spill, why it is not cleaned immediately. Okay. Maybe because you do not have the cleaning equipment to clean the oil spill, or you may not have the trained person to clean the oil spill, or you may not have the adequate kits, okay, kit to clean the oil spill. So that is what we will be focusing here. So likewise, when you see a good stacked in ales, the management failure is they did not do a proper, they don't have a procedure or inspection of the warehouse. Okay. Or they don't have a poor housekeeping. So that would be as part of the root cause. So likewise, if I see using mobile phone, so using mobile phone is an immediate cause. So the root cause is why they are using a mobile phone, because they don't have a policy for mobile use in the warehouse. So since it is not nowhere defined that you should not use mobile phone, there are no rules defined or no policies for mobile phone use in the work warehouse. That would be your root causes. So if you look here, inadequate risk assessment for the forklift truck task, because the assessments are too general. They don't have any specific risk assessment tailored for the warehouse activities. So the root, one of the management failure is they do not have a risk assessment specific for the forklift truck task. or they do not have a risk assessment for young person. There is an young forklift truck operator, so you should do a specific risk assessment for vulnerable people like young person, disabled person, pregnant women, lone worker. So here there is no risk assessment for young person. And then training, okay, inadequate training of the forklift truck driver, or inadequate training in the forklift truck activity. For the entire activity, there is no proper training done. Or there is no SSOW for the forklift truck activity. Okay. Or inadequate procedure, like I said, for use of mobile phones while driving vehicles. So inadequate procedure. So these are the key points here. Risk assessments, training, uh, SSOW or procedure. See again, you see procedure. So the focus shifts to the policies and procedures and records. So inadequate procedure for FLT and worker separation. Inadequate procedure for workers in the warehouse. Okay, they don't have the defined rules to be followed. Inadequate spillage procedure. Okay, so if there is a spillage, the procedure tells that the spillage to be immediately cleaned. So who will clean the spill? What are the cleaning equipments needed? And what are the follow-up for the cleanup? So there is no procedure here for spill. That's why it was left unattended and a forklift truck skidded. And then inadequate FLT maintenance procedure. So if there is a proper maintenance procedure, then the oil leak would not have occurred. Okay. So there is no procedure to tell that the forklift truck every 6 months they should be, undergoing maintenance. Okay. It is nowhere defined. And then inadequate housekeeping, excessive work demands, production focus instead of safety focus. So here this organization, they are prioritizing production and safety is not prioritized. So at many places we can see evidence that you know uh, there is no they rarely see management in the warehouse, and you are told that there is no money because they wanted to only increase the sales. And then inadequate supervision. So if there was a proper supervision happening, then that oil spillage would have been identified. The storing the goods on the aisle would have been identified. Use of mobile phone would have been identified, and the behavior would have been corrected. So there is no supervision or no safety monitoring. Okay. So whether it is a safety tour or a safety sampling or a safety inspection, nothing is happening in that warehouse. So these are the management failure that has led to the accident. So if we are writing the immediate causes like using mobile phone while driving, oil spillage, forklift truck skid, or goods stacked on the aisles, all these will be not mark-worthy points. So the same question, instead of management failures, if they use the word immediate causes, then those points would be appropriate. For immediate causes, if you are writing these points, then they will not be mark worthy. Okay. So clearly understand the difference between question number 9 and question number 5. So in 5, it is about the negative indicators. So negative indicators includes mostly about the immediate and underlying causes. Okay. Whereas this question, number 9, management failures, it focuses on the root causes of the accident. Okay. So when you're writing answer, you might think for question 5 and question 9, the answers are very similar. You think answers are repetitive. But if you look closely, question 5 focus on the immediate and underlying causes. These are the things that you which are obvious, which gives an indication, okay, about the culture. Whereas question 9, it tells gets into the root of the incident, which is the management failure. Okay. So any doubt in question number 9? Okay. All right. So tomorrow, first half. It's 9 o'clock. So tomorrow, first half, we will be discussing the remainder of the question in this paper. Okay. So the questions we are yet to discuss is question number 2. Okay. So question number 2 we are yet to discuss. I think question number 4. Okay. And question number 10. So we will discuss these three questions for the first half, and then second half I would be starting with the syllabus of GC2. Okay. So I will give you an overview of what is GC2 in terms of the syllabus, how it is assessed, and then we would start with element number 5, which is about the physical and psychological hazards. So I would give you a complete overview of the chapters of GC2 and how it is assessed. And then we would start with GC2 syllabus from tomorrow or possibly from Friday. Okay, if there is no sufficient time for tomorrow after discussing this paper. Now, regarding the question paper, yesterday I have watched, sorry, today morning I have WhatsApp another question paper, which is about the amusement park. Okay. So on the last day of our training, I will do a quick review discussion for the questions in this amusement park question paper. Okay. So for now, one question paper we have done. We will be completing the discussion of all the questions, and then the other paper possibly on the last day I would be just going through an overview. I'll be discussing the all the questions, and particularly any questions you find very challenging I would be discussing in detail. So as part of the training days, two question paper I would discuss on its appropriate answers. Okay. And then I would also share one more question paper, which you can, do it as a practice before your final assessment. Okay. So that would be good enough for practice and preparation for your GC1. Now, GC2, the way how it is assessed is completely different from what we have been, how we have been assessing GC1. So that I will be covering for tomorrow. Okay. All right. So like I said, tomorrow I will discuss the remaining questions, and then we would start with GC2 overview. Okay. All right. So with this, we will conclude for today's session. So I will catch you tomorrow for day 12. And then until then, goodbye and have a good one. Thank you. I would be online for another 15 minutes. So if you have any doubts, let me know.